Hey guys, it's Bree. So today I'm going to be talking about postpartum cloth pads, which might seem a bit odd because I don't have a baby and I'm not pregnant. I'm not planning to get pregnant anytime soon, but I get a lot of questions, not really on a daily basis, but every now and then, about postpartum pads, how you use them, how many you need, all that sort of stuff. So I figured I would use the information that I get from talking to lots of other women who have had babies and who have used cloth pads for postpartum use and put all that information into this video. So I will start off by showing you which pads I have first of all. Postpartum pads often branded as the same as overnight pads. If you look at a website like, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but quite a lot of websites brand their pads as overnight pads / postpartum pads. So when you buy an overnight pad, quite often you can actually use it postpartum. So I figured that I would show you my overnight stash because a lot of these pads are branded as postpartum with the exception of I think 2 of them. I'll tell you when I get through them. So anyway, the first one I have is an Earthshine Luxe pad. This is 13.5 inches and is her Harvest Moon style, I believe. It's Pro-Cool topped. I don't know what's in it. I have an Orgo pad here. This is 13.5 inches, cotton topped. I have another Orgo pad. Orgo pad's O-R-G-O. And she has her own website. She's in the US, I believe. This is Minky topped, again 13.5 inches. This is in her square style. Then I have a Precious Stars pad. When I was still sewing, I was experimenting with different patterns. So this was one. Actually, I didn't stitch this one very well, it's a center stitch, but it works overnight. It's quite a good shape, I think, for me anyway. And then I have a 12.5 inch That Pink Sack cloth pad. I don't know if she still exists actually. I believe this was actually only advertised as a heavy, but it is very, has a lot of absorbency in it, so I would definitely think it could be used overnight. And I have used it overnight. It's just a little bit short for me, given as the snaps are in the middle. If it was more forward, then I could definitely use this overnight more often, but because it's in the middle, I can't really, but it still is an overnight pad, and it could definitely be used for postpartum during the day. Then I have a Cozy Cloth 12-inch pad. I really don't like this one. This is when flannel gets really hard. I haven't washed it in the softening stuff yet. This is 12 inches from Cozy Cloth. This is only advertised as an overnight pad, I believe, but it's very affordable. And when I was starting out with cloth, it was a very good investment indeed. And finally, I have my Pampered Mama 13-inch Minky topped pad. This is quite often considered the queen of postpartum pads because she has a gap in here that you can slip an ice pack in after you've given birth so that you can get some cooling action down there. So some of my younger viewers out there might not understand what I'm talking about when I say postpartum flow. Basically, when you have a baby, as soon as you give birth, you often bleed very heavily. Now, the length that you bleed for and the heaviness of your flow and, you know, how long you bleed, that will really, or the pattern that you bleed rather, how long you're heavy and ease off again, that will really depend on the individual itself. Sometimes people bleed for a week, sometimes people can bleed for 9 weeks. That was my aunt. I felt kind of sorry for her. It really depends. Usually it's normal to bleed for up to 2 to 3 weeks. After that you probably want to see a doctor or your health nurse will probably talk to you about it anyway. But what happens is when you get pregnant, obviously your uterus expands and has to shrink back again. And remember, when you get pregnant, you don't have your period, so you've still got that uterine lining that's built up inside you and it has to flush out again. And that's why you get really heavy after you have a baby. And because of that, you're going to need extra heavy pads, and that's why the postpartum pads often advertise in the same section as night pads, because you're going to need all that absorbency. Now, the number of pads that you need, this is kind of hard to estimate because, again, it will depend how heavy you are, and also a lot of the time you'll find you'll only be heavy for a few days before it starts to ease off just a little bit, and you might want to go back to just using your normal heavy pads if you use cloth pads in general. You also might want to take into account the length of your pads now. If you aren't pregnant, or if you've used cloth pads before you were pregnant and you know that you like shorter pads or you know that you like longer pads, take that into account, because when you get your postpartum flow, it's just going to be a heavier version of your period. I personally, on my heavy days, like to have length, and for that reason I would make the estimation, because obviously I need to prepare for this before I have a baby, but I might not necessarily know what my periods or my postpartum bleeding is going to be like. Obviously, haven't had the baby yet. I would estimate that I'd want a few 15-inch pads because I love length, and especially for when I'm sleeping, I would definitely want the length to cover me. So I might even go to 17 inches. The biggest postpartum pad that I've ever found was 21 inches in length. And I mean, this is 13 inches, and you can see it compared to my head. So just think how long 17 inches is going to be. It really will depend on you individually. If you like longer pads overnight, again, probably want to get some longer pads. But I would estimate for me, having a moderate flow at the moment, but again, liking length on my heavier days, I would estimate that I'd want about 3 or 4 15-inch postpartum pads. And then I would go for probably about 8 13.5-inch pads because I like that length, especially for overnight as well. But during the day, I think it would be really good for when I'm really heavy. So this would be a good length for me, and that's why I picked to have more of them. After that, I'd probably go for about 4 other 12-inch, 11-inch heavy pads. Maybe I might just take them out of my usual stash. But that should get you through your postpartum flow. Remember, it should also, like a normal period, start to die down after a few days. So you'll be really heavy, possibly for the first week. If you're really unlucky, shouldn't be super heavy for longer than that. And then it will start to die down. So it's not really worth investing, or at least to me it doesn't make sense to invest in a huge amount of postpartum pads so I can spread out the washing. I'd probably wash every day and just have a decent stash that will get me through, and then I can save for if I have another baby, or I can start using overnight. If you want to be really economical, it would be a good idea to buy some fabric and make your own. If I get round to it, I will try and do a video on that, or if you guys are interested, I can probably do a video on how to make an overnight / postpartum pad. You just change the length for whatever you think would work for you. As far as top fabrics go, I have heard, and I can easily see why it would be, that Minky is a heavenly fabric for after you've given birth, just because it is so soft, and things will be a little bit sensitive down there. After all, you've just pushed the head out of your vagina. So I would reckon, again, it will probably depend on your likes and dislikes now as well. When I'm heavy, I can't stand Minky, but I would still use Minky as would still invest in a couple of Minky pads for my postpartum flow, just because it is so soft. And if you don't like it, you'll know for next time if you have another baby that you really don't want to have that stuff. But good to have a variety. So I would get some Minky. I would definitely also get some cotton, although cotton doesn't tend to do well with heavy gushing flow, which is quite often what it's like with postpartum. So for those of you who love cotton, maybe get some, but also bear in mind it might not be so good if you have a if you've got a really heavy flow now and you like cotton, then you might be okay with postpartum. But if you've got a light flow and you like cotton, then just bear in mind when you're heavy, you might not like it as much because it can feel quite wet. Pro-Cool fabric is like a wicking fabric, so it's designed to try and keep you dry. So I would definitely be interested to see how this copes with an actual postpartum flow. Definitely overnight, I feel it keeps me dry and I don't feel that horrible wet sitting in a puddle feeling with it. That's what I really like about Pro-Cool, so that'd be worth investing in. This particular fabric here is bamboo fleece. It's quite hard to get bamboo fleece, but for the sake of this video, pretend this is bamboo velour. Bamboo velour is great because it absorbs really quickly and it's fabulous for gushing flows. So definitely, if you can get your hands on some bamboo velour overnight pads, or postpartum pads even, invest in it. I really would recommend it. Unless you know you hate bamboo velour now, I would definitely recommend it for overnight use or for postpartum use. I'm kind of switching them together in this video because they're very similar. If you have a heavy flow overnight, you'll know what it's like. And the last two I have are flannel. I don't like flannel because, as you can kind of see here, it pills quite badly. But flannel also tends to be quite good for gushing flow, so if you don't mind flannel and if you don't mind pilling, then you might also find this works very well. If you live in a soft water area as well, it makes a huge difference because it really does keep the flannel a lot softer. This is a good quality flannel, so this one's actually okay. Even though it's pilled, it feels okay. The other one, oh, I don't like touching it. But flannel can also absorb quite quickly and stops you from feeling wet, so people who have heavy flows like it too. Again, matter of preference. But I would say try and get a few of each. So I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. The one thing I'm just going to say before I end this is quite often I've heard from women who've had cesarean sections that they don't bleed as much after they give birth. In fact, some of the women I've spoken to get whole postpartum stashes, end up having a cesarean, and then literally spot for the next few days, which is another reason I would say beware of buying too many pads or making too many pads before you have your baby, just in case, because you never know, you might not need to have heavy pads if that happens. Not everyone, that's not always the case with people who have cesareans, but you know, it's just something to be aware of, that it could happen. And if you know you're going to have a cesarean, then maybe not buy quite as many either. Have a few just in case, but maybe not as many. But I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Thanks for watching. I've just got some new stock on my website, so please check it out below, and I will see you later. Bye.